welcome back to MountainAdvantures and part 3 of our wall build. This week we're doing more cutting, more painting, more sanding, but at the very end of it we do finally manage to fit our wall.
We've now finished making our cardboard template. As you can see, it's in several pieces because we didn't have a piece of cardboard big enough to do it in one. And the challenge now is to disconnect this from the van and from the wall while trying to keep the template as together as possible so we can transfer it onto a piece of plywood and get cutting. Right, we have had hopefully some marginal success in transferring that flimsy random piece of cardboard template onto our plywood. We're trying to use one of the pieces that we got in the van when we bought it, hence why there's all these weird shapes cut out of it. And you can see here this marked out section is where the seat is going to sit, so it will wrap around the top of the seat like this. And then down here we've contoured to the curved edge of the van. There's a little kick in the plastic trim here. And then this hole, fingers crossed, is lined up with where our cupboard hatch is going to go. So it will just disappear into the cupboard hatch because this will all be getting cut out anyway, eventually. Go, go, go! Okay, we've got our dry fit in of the wall. We've done a little bit more trimming around these edges just to make it fit a little bit more snug. And then we need to obviously trim off this bit. And we're also going to trim out this door, so this big hole and this little hole aren't going to matter because all of this section is going. So that's going to be our cupboard.
So to trim this overhang back, we're going to use this flush trim bit on the router. So that is a cutting blade here with a bearing here that will spin, and the cutting blade is the exact same width as this bearing. And then what we can do is basically run that bearing along the frame we want, and so the cutting bit will cut all the way down until that bearing hits the frame over here, wherever it is, and then we can run all the way along. The ball bearing thing will follow the frame and the cutting disc will cut it out, and we should follow that edge very neatly.
So what we should end up with on that piece over there is our top plywood coming up perfectly in line with the edge of the frame. Like that has worked pretty well.
Yeah, so it does just round the corners off because obviously it's running on a little circle, so it can't get quite right into the corners, but it does follow that line very nicely.
Beautiful.
So we're just going around drilling some holes, and Ayesha's then countersinking them, so then we can bloody rude, so we can then affix this more properly so that when it comes to flush trim routing out this bit, it doesn't all shift around. And then we can take it off, varnish it and everything, and then we should be able to line it up better because there'll be more straight edges. Do carry on.
This is our makeshift scribe. It's actually been working reasonably well compared to some of our other makeshift scribes that we've had in the past.
So I cut into here an arbitrary distance just so we'd be behind this plastic trim, so this line's a bit wobbly. And then when we got up here, I moved this around here and then kind of just followed that all the way up.
Look at that. So, after several months, we may now have learnt how to scribe. But the plan was to now cut this out and then dry fit it, but it is raining rather badly and it's just hit 4 o'clock and it's supposed to rain for the rest of the day. So I think we might just call it a day there.
Yeah, call it a day.
Go grab a cup of tea.
Have a cup of tea, maybe edit some videos for you lovely people. Alright, good morning guys, back in the van this morning. Got to cut that piece of wood, but it rained on us last night. So we'll get that out, get that cut, and hopefully it will fit that edge nicely. So just got to cut out that odd shape, and then hopefully that will slot up nicely against that plastic bit running down there. Let's get cracking. Care to explain why you're collecting sawdust into a bag?
This is eventually, maybe, going to go into our composting toilet.
Here we have the wall in all its glory. That door piece down there is actually cut, we just haven't done anything with it. Yep, it's that bit there. So now we're trying to work out the best way to route this into some horizontal shiplap and make it look pretty.
Because as you can tell, these pieces are not all affixed yet.
Okay, it is raining today, so I've picked a rainy weather activity, which is painting. Way! As you can see, I've laid out the pieces for our bulkhead wall here, and then I've put out some just scrap plastic sheeting so I don't get paint all over the van. And the first kind of layer that we're doing is going to be a wood primer. And that's partly to help seal in the wood because it's warping a little bit at the moment because it keeps getting moisture in it. And also to help the paint adhere better later on. We are going to eventually be painting it pure white. So we've just got a plain old wood primer that is white. And I'm going to give it a first coat now. Obviously I'll only be able to paint these sides. After they're dry, we'll flip them over and I'll paint the other sides.
We've got our varnish and our big brushes. This is actually the leftover varnish that we use for our floor, and because we don't really care about this side because it's going to be basically the inside of the wall backed by like the insulation, we're just going to varnish this piece to help seal it and to stop any warpage over time, but we don't really care about the end result, so we thought why not just utilize the varnish rather than use up all of our wood primer.
On the cab side of the wall, we opted for a dark grey colour.
This is where our bulkhead wall is at the moment. And what we've been doing this morning is drawing on these lines. So these are marking where we're going to route to create our shiplap effect. And we've done that basically by cutting out this dummy plank to the right size. And then literally just kind of moving it down the board and making sure it's lined up with the previous line to draw out each of our lines. You can see down here we've got some interesting joins going on here, but that's actually going to be below our bench seat pretty much entirely, so we're not too worried about that. And then these screws that you can see at the moment, what we're going to do when we finish is we're going to countersink those properly into the wood and then wood fill over the top of that and paint over the top of that, so it should create quite a nice seamless effect. As you might have been able to see while we were routing, we had a slight issue. So all along here, nice and straight, nice and even, looks great. And then when we got to here, as you can see, the piece of wood we're using as a straight edge actually lifts up a little bit, and that is just the right width for the base of the router to slip it under. So as Alex was coming along, what happened is the router slipped under, and you can see here along this line it basically curved in a little bit until we noticed and pulled it out and corrected it, and then I stood on this to weigh it down. But it does mean we had this bend in our lovely piece of shiplap routing. So what we've done is we just wood fillered it in, and the wood filler says you can like file it and plane it and stuff, so we're hoping we'll fill this in, sand it down, and then attempt to route again in a straight line once it's fully dry. Okay, we're going for take 2 with the router, and hopefully it works. I'm trying to weight this side, so hopefully the gap's gone and we put an extra clamp on to try and hold the wood together. Let's give it a go. Yeah. Nope. Okay, we have wood fillered again. I think the problem this time, so you can see here this gap is still there. We're not entirely sure why, because it's now fully supported underneath. But I think probably what happened, because it wasn't supported underneath a second ago, and I was just pressing down on this or standing on this to weight it. But I think when this piece wasn't supported, what was happening is when we were pressing down with the router, we were basically exacerbating that bend. But hopefully this time, if I stand back up here, this piece now has nowhere to go. So I'm hoping that this will be the last time we have to route this piece.
Attempt number 3.
Yep, we're going to do a final attempt for today on this routing. If this doesn't work, I don't know, we riot. As you can probably tell from the lighting, it is now getting towards evening. Hallelujah!
The routing gods listened.
Woohoo! Alright, now we just need to
do that another
10
times.
Yeah, 10 or 12 times, great. That looked pretty damn tight after 3 goes. Yay!
I'm glad that worked.
Look at that grin of triumph. Welcome back to day 2 of just trying to route this thing. After yesterday's kind of mess up and mishap, we are giving it another go, and this time we're going to do it right.
The routing is done. So yeah, it's all finished, it's all routed. I'm actually really happy with how that's turned out. And I think once we've primed it and painted it, it will actually look pretty nice.
Yeah, and actually, after yesterday's fiasco where we had to reroute the same thing about 3 times and kept wood filling it, we didn't really have an issue with the rest of the routing. It all turned out pretty well.
Yeah, so this was yesterday's fiasco. And actually, yeah, you can see the wood fillers are slightly different colour, but once we've sanded that back a bit more and repainted it, I reckon that'll be a job well done.
Pretty good. Time for lunch.
Right, we are choosing the position for our hinges, and you can see we've gone for these kind of big, bold, black hinges, and that's mainly because we've got a big white wall basically, so we thought the contrast would look good and would help break up the space a little bit, and also it's that kind of farmhouse look with the shiplap effect. We're just gonna go in and drill the screws for them.
That's what you do with screws, you drill them.
You drill them. You drill the screws.
Okay, we are going to hopefully install the wall today. So right now we're going to bring in the frame, plop it down here because it's the best space to work with, put all the back pieces on, and hopefully attach them in the exact same way we had them before.
Alrighty, the back of the wall is in. We have filled all the screw holes with wood filler, and so now we're going to give it a little touch up with the old paint. The wall is in, the doors are on, so now we're just going around touching up the paint where we've had to sand it off.
That's all for this week. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next Thursday.
Just copy you being awkward.
The ladybirds are back! Everybody panic!